Hello friends, welcome to Dungeons & Dragonfly, where I adapt various characters for use in D&D. I'm Dragonfly9078, and today's request comes from Milo on Patreon. We're getting bizarre with Panicotta Fugo. Thinking about goals for the build, we need to be a smart gangster with anger issues, because that's what Fugo is. Oh, and we need Purple Haze, a ghost that lives inside of us who punches people with an incredibly deadly disease. For ability scores, I'll be using the standard point array. Multi-classing minimums are Strength, Wisdom, and Dexterity, so keep an eye on those if you're rolling at home. First up is Intelligence. We're a smart gangster with anger issues, so this should be fairly self-explanatory. Next is Strength at 14. Most things in JoJo are solved ultimately by punching. Wisdom is 13. We're smart, but we still need Giorno to explain his plans because they tend to be kinda batshit. And Dexterity is 12, pretty much just for the multi-classing, while Constitution and Charisma get the short end of the stick. We don't need them for anything, but Constitution will give us some more HP, so we'll make that higher. People in JoJo after Part 2 tend to be normal people, with weird ghosts that have all the powers, so we'll go Human for +1 to all of our ability scores. We'll take the Criminal background, giving us proficiency in Deception, Stealth, Thieves' Tools, and Backgammon sets, to satisfy the Gangster part of Smart Gangster with Anger Issues, and get the Anger Issues part by starting out as a Barbarian. That gives us proficiency in Perception and Nature, Unarmored Defense to make our AC 10 plus our Dex and Con modifiers, and the ability to fly into a Rage as a bonus action. While enraged, we have advantage on Strength checks and saves, resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and we deal an extra 2 damage with our Strength-based melee attacks. Starting at 2nd level, we can attack recklessly to get advantage on those attacks at the cost of giving all attacks against us advantage until our next turn. We also develop a Danger Sense, giving us advantage on Dex saves against enemy stands that we can see. And speaking of stands, we'll get ours by jumping over to Monk. Monks get their own version of Unarmored Defense, which uses Wisdom and Dex instead of Dex and Con, but since we have the Barbarian version, we actually technically don't get this one. Ask your DM if you can use this one instead, though, it'll actually end up being higher. Monks get Martial Arts too, so we can use a d4 for the damage of our unarmed strikes, and make an unarmed strike as a bonus action after taking the attack action. We can also use Dexterity instead of Strength for our unarmed strikes, but our Strength is higher than our Dex, so just ignore that bit. We start to get our cool stand powers at 2nd level with Unarmored Movement, which increases our speed by 10 feet, and key powers like Patient Defense, Step of the Wind, and Flurry of Blows. Now, Monk is the go-to class for stands because of the Way of the Astral Self. We can summon our stand's arms at this level by spending a key point as a bonus action. The arms stick around for up to 10 minutes, and when we summon them, any number of creatures of our choice within 10 feet have to make a Dexterity save or take force damage equal to 2 of our martial arts dice. We can use the arms to make unarmed strikes that deal force damage and have an extra 5 feet of range, and while they're out, we can use our wisdom instead of our strength for our unarmed strikes and strength checks and saves. Just like with our dexterity though, our wisdom is lower than our strength, so we can just ignore this bit too. Our stand can also deflect missiles even when the arms aren't summoned, reducing the damage of an incoming projectile by 1d10 plus our dex modifier and monk level as a reaction. If that reduces the damage to 0, we can then catch the projectile and spend a key point to throw it back as a monk weapon. Now, Fugo is a genius, meaning that I want to cap off our intelligence by the end of the build, so bump that up by 2 with our first ASI. We can also slow our falls at this level, reducing any falling damage we take by 5 times our monk level. 5th level monks get extra attack, so we can make 2 attacks with the attack action, or 3 with martial arts, or 4 with flurry of blows, and any of our melee attacks can be stunning strikes by spending a key point, forcing the creature we hit to make a con save or be stunned for a turn. Bear in mind that if you hit on the first attack and manage to stun them, you have advantage on the rest of your attacks in that round, assuming of course you didn't just use Reckless Attack to have advantage on all of them. Also, our martial arts die bumps up to a d6. At 6th level, our unarmed strikes count as magical, so our stand can hit other stands, our unarmored movement increases to plus 15 feet, and we can summon more of Purple Haze with Visage of the Astral Self. As a bonus action, or as part of the same bonus action that we use to summon the arms, we can spend a key point to summon Purple Haze's face. That gives us advantage on Insight and Intimidation checks, lets us see normally in any kind of darkness, magical or non-magical, within 120 feet, and lets us either whisper so only a particular creature within 60 feet of us can hear us, or yell so that all creatures within 600 feet can hear us. Now that we're punchy, we need to be poisonous, and for that we'll head over to Druid. Poison Spray is a good little poison punch cantrip, and we'll also grab Guidance along with Jump and Longstrider, and Detect Magic to see enemy stands. 2nd level druids can turn into animals with wild shape, but that's not a thing Fugo can do, so we'll ignore it, besides knowing that we can do it twice per rest. Instead, we'll focus on the Circle of Spores. That gives us Chill Touch for a ranged option, and Halo of Spores to surround ourselves in Purple Haze's, well, haze. When a creature gets within 10 feet of us or starts their turn within 10 feet of us, we can use our reaction to deal 1d4 necrotic damage to them if they fail a con save. What we really want, though, is Symbiotic Entity. As an action, we can expend a use of our Wild Shape to get 4 temporary HP for every Druid level we have. For 10 minutes, or until we lose all of that temporary HP, whichever comes first, our Halo of Spores deals 2 dice of damage instead of 1, and whenever we hit with a melee weapon attack, we deal an additional 1d6 necrotic damage. This meshes pretty well with our Astral Self. This is an action, and the Astral Self is a bonus action, so we can activate both in the same turn. They both last 10 minutes, and our Arms of the Astral Self's unarmed strikes do count as melee weapon attacks, so they do get the bonus necrotic damage for Purple Haze's disease punching. For second level spells, we get Blindness, Deafness, and Gentle Repose from the Circle of Spores. Then we'll get Wither and Bloom, which deals 2d6 necrotic damage to creatures of our choice in a 10-foot radius sphere around a point that we choose within 60 feet, if they fail a Constitution save. Then lets another creature in that area expend a hit die to heal that much plus our spellcasting modifier. And protection from poison gives us at least some measure of resistance to Purple Haze's poison attacks. We'll then utterly invalidate that spell with the Poisoner feat, which lets our poison damage ignore poison resistance. We can also make our own poison with an hour of work and 50 gold, and apply poison to our weapons and ammo as a bonus action, but it's really the overcoming resistance that I'm interested in. And speaking of resistance, that's the cantrip we'll grab at this level to help out our saving throws. Now, this is not a build that wants an abundance of spells, and I don't want any of the third level options, but we do automatically get Animate Dead and Gaseous Form from Circle of Spores. 6th level Spore Druids can turn beasts and humanoids into zombies when they die. That's definitely more of a Giorno thing, though, so we'll just focus on our Halo of Spores damage going up to 1d6, or 2d6 if we have the Symbiotic Entity on. Our 4th level Circle of Spores spells are Confusion, which we don't care about, and Blight, which we do. A creature of our choice within 30 feet makes a con save, taking 8d8 necrotic damage on a fail, half on a success. Plant creatures and magical plants have disadvantage on the save and take maximum damage, and non-magical plants that aren't creatures just straight up die without making a save at all. We'll cap off our intelligence at 8th level to be the smartest that a smart gangster with anger issues can be, and move on to 9th level where, surprisingly, we actually want both of our circle spells. Cloud Kill summons a 20-foot radius cloud of poisonous fog for up to 10 minutes with our concentration. Any creature that enters the fog or starts its turn in there makes a Constitution save, taking 5d8 poison damage on a fail, half on a success. And Contagion gives a creature that we touch a disease. Hey, that sounds familiar. We make a melee spell attack, poisoning the creature on a hit. At the end of each of their turns, they make a Constitution save. If they pass 3 times before they fail 3 times, then the spell ends. If they don't, they stop being poisoned and instead get our choice of one of 6 diseases, each one affecting a different ability score. Filth Fever and Seizures work the same, giving disadvantage on attacks, ability checks, and saves that use Strength and Dex respectively. Slimy Doom gives disadvantage on Constitution checks and saves, and whenever the creature takes damage, they're stunned for a turn. Mindfire gives disadvantage on Intelligence checks and saves, and the creature acts as though they're under the Confusion spell. Blinding Sickness gives disadvantage on Wisdom checks and saves, and blinds the creature. And Flesh Rot gives disadvantage on just Charisma checks, not Charisma saves, and gives the creature vulnerability to all damage. The disease lasts for 7 days, or until it's removed by a spell or something else that treats diseases. At 10th level, our Halo of Spores damage goes up to 1d8, or 2d8 in the Symbiotic Entity, and we can spread our spores with Spreading Spores. While our Symbiotic Entity is active, we can use a bonus action to throw our Halo of Spores up to 30 feet, creating a 10-foot cube of poison. Any creature that enters the cube or starts its turn in there has to make a Constitution save or take our Halo of Spores damage, which again is 2d8 since we have to be in our Symbiotic Entity to even use this. The cube lasts for a minute, but it fades early if we drop out of our Symbiotic Entity or throw another Spreading Spores cube, though while we have our cube active, we can't use our Halo of Spores reaction. We also get another cantrip at this level, so Thunderclap? Sure, Thunderclap. I'm also interested in precisely 0 of the 6th level Druid spells, so I'll just take this chance to remind you that every Druid level we get is more temporary HP for Symbiotic Entity, so that's why we're finishing with a couple of lackluster Druid levels rather than taking more Monk or Barbarian. And the 6th level spell slot is nice to have even without any 6th level spells. Our capstone is the 12th level of Druid for one last ability score improvement. Round off Strength to 16 and Wisdom to 14. Now that we're done, how'd we do? Well, we're decently controlling, with poison, stunning, and disease to debilitate our enemies, then Cloud Kill and Spreading Spores to herd them into position so we can hammer them with 2 to 4 attacks in a round, all with advantage, that each do 2d6 damage. Not the greatest damage potential, I admit, but it is consistent damage since it is force and necrotic, so it's not as easily resisted, especially if we manage to land a Flesh Rot Contagion and give them vulnerability to all damage. And if we need to, we can switch modes from more controlling to a little bit more tanky, as going into a Rage blocks off our spells, but gives us 3 damage resistances to get the most out of our symbiotic entity's 48 temporary HP. Actually, I'm very pleased with how well these classes work together. Rage blunts damage, so symbiotic entity lasts longer. Our Astral Arms deal extra damage with our Rage and symbiotic entity. Martial Arts and Flurry of Blows lets us get even more necrotic damage in with more attacks. Our Spreading Spores herds enemies, can be used while raging, and blocks off our Halo of Spores reaction, so we don't have to choose between that and keeping Deflect Missiles up, which also helps our temporary HP last longer. It all just feels like it fits together very elegantly, and I like that a lot. On the other hand, even with all that, our AC is only 13, so we'll get hit more often than not, especially if we're using Reckless Attack all the time, so we could get knocked out of Symbiotic Entity without too much trouble. There are a couple of other concerns like creatures that are immune to poison or good at Constitution saves, but the single biggest issue with the build is that for character reasons, we maxed out Intelligence instead of Wisdom. We don't use Intelligence for anything. Cap off Wisdom instead, and we get better save DCs, better Monk unarmored defense. We can use our Wisdom for our Astral Arms. It basically just makes the whole thing work better at the cost of, I guess, Reckless Attack and the bonus damage from Raging, since those only work with strength-based attacks. And that's Fugo. I hope you enjoyed the build. If you have any feedback or suggestions for characters you'd like to see me build, please let me know. Thanks again to Milo for the request, and thank you all for watching, friends. I will see y'all later.